Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. People coming in and sharing their journey. People that have come from all around the world, coming here to Loma, Linda, seeking wholeness and hope and health and healing. Our special guests today are Pastor Leon and Betty Thompson from Weed, California. They've come here to share their journey and the impact that Loma, Linda made on them. Pastor, and I'm going to call you Leon and Betty, it's good to have you here. We've got people from around the world that are watching. And before we share your journey, we want to learn a little bit about you and about your background. Where are you from?
Well, originally I was born in Whittier, California, but then grew up in Concord, and that was the main area in which I grew up and had connections with the church all the way from the very, very beginning of my life.
Okay. And Betty, where are you from?
Well, I was born in Seattle and grew up in the Seattle, Washington area. Moved to California when I was in high school and then grew up in that area. Became a Christian when I was about 15.
Okay.
Dedicated myself to Christ and been involved in the church ever since then.
At the age of 15, gave your life to Jesus and been serving him ever since.
I have.
All right. So where did you go to school, Leon?
Well, I went to San Jose State University as a music major, and that was going to be my whole life. Music was something, I started taking piano lessons when I was 5 years old, and I continued to take lessons until I was basically 22 years old. And then
So you were a music major?
Yes, right,
Okay.
at San Jose State, and I felt for about 5 years a call to ministry, but I fought that, and I said to God, this is not good. I know music. I do not know how to stand up and speak in a pulpit or to speak before a group. And please, get someone else. I will continue on in the music field and make me a minister of music if you want to, but not a minister of the word and sacrament.
So, but you had this kind of a conviction, an overwhelming conviction that God was calling you into pastoral ministry.
A strong call, and I remember finishing up my sophomore recital at San Jose State and then going back to the boarding house where we were staying, and I literally fell on my knees and I said, God, I have struggled with this, and if this is what you want me to do, I will change my major and I will begin to move towards the ministry. And I've never looked back and I've never regretted that, although I've continued with my music and continued to play piano and organ and direct choirs and so forth.
Well, so did you graduate from San Jose State then?
No, I did not. And then I transferred and I went to Whitworth University in Spokane, Washington, where I could begin to prepare and practice for the ministry and taking Greek class and doing all the things that I needed to do for preparation for seminary.
So did you graduate then in Spokane?
Yes,
from
yes.
Which university was that?
Whitworth
Okay.
University.
And then where did you go?
And then from there I went on to Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky. Spent 4 years there, and at that time then I graduated, and our first call was to a Native American village in Hoona, Alaska.
So you went as missionaries to Alaska, and I served in Alaska for a little while. Well, Betty, when did you meet this guy?
Well, we met at youth group at the local Presbyterian church in high school. I liked him, but he didn't know that.
He didn't know.
He didn't know that. And in fact, it was after he broke up with a girlfriend, or a girlfriend broke up with him, that he decided, oh, there's Betty, I'll call her out. So after he graduated from high school.
So this was after high school, the two of you got it. I mean, how do you remember this experience of getting together?
Well, I was directing the high school choir at the church where we were both attending, and she decided that she wanted to get to know me better, so she joined the choir.
Wow.
In high school, and so
Very
at that
strategic
point,
then.
It was.
Okay. So, but you were already out of high school, and were you out of college at this point?
No. It was about my second year in college that Betty and I began to date.
Okay.
And we dated for several years before we decided to get married.
And I know that you're coming up on your 49th anniversary.
Yeah, that's right.
Congratulations.
That's right.
Thank you.
And how many children do you have?
We have 3 children. We have a daughter who still lives in Juneau, Alaska, and a son who is a minister in the Presbyterian Church in Billings, Montana, and a daughter also, our youngest, who lives in Dubuque, Iowa, and her husband is a pastor.
Okay, so you got a couple of pastors in the family then.
Right.
Well, now tell us a little bit about your your mission experience there in Alaska. And I know you and I were talking, and one of your children were born up there in Alaska, weren't
Right.
they?
Our son, when we went to Hoona first, our oldest daughter was 3 months old.
And
so
Hoonas, where is that?
it's about 80 miles west of Juneau on the Chichikov Island in southeast Alaska.
So it's out on an island,
a huge
a
island.
huge island.
And it's
okay.
with a Tlingit Native American
Okay.
community. But it's just Tlingit is one of the Indian tribes in
So
Alaska.
was your first baby, or was that your son?
No, our first child was 3 months old when we went to this community, and then our son was born about a year later, and he was born in Juneau, but we were living in Hoona, and I had to take a flight, late night flight from Hoona seaplane over to Juneau.
So I'm sure Leon joined you, so you
Oh
could.
no, he didn't come.
Oh,
he
he
had
wouldn't-
church.
Oh, he had church.
It was Saturday night.
First things first, huh?
He had Saturday night, and so he had to stay for church. So, and take care of our youngest daughter, who was a baby, and her friends took care of her. He came in after David was born.
So where you're flying from this island into Juneau then?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And did the pilot know that you were
In labor?
expecting?
Well, he knew I was expecting because I was as big as a house, but I wasn't supposed to be in labor because it was just the pilot and me. So I'm standing out on the float plane, well, at the dock, waiting for the float plane, and he looks at me and he says, "Are you in labor?" I says, "Oh no, I'm just going early." And about halfway over, up in the air, we got a call from our exec, and he said, "Are there 3 on board?" And the pilot looked at me and he said, "You are in labor." I said, "But we will hold off to deliver till we get to Juneau." So he was not
Cooperative
happy
wife.
with me.
All right. So and is that son now? Is that the one that's a pastor now?
David,
Okay.
yep.
All right. So you were out there in this island doing ministry. I mean, how long were you there?
We were there for 4 years, but also then I worked some on the mission boat that the church owned in southeast Alaska, the Anna Jackman. And we were responsible for doing the evaluations at the end of summer for all the college students that would come doing 3 months of mission work in Alaska, doing vacation Bible school, going to the logging camps, the canneries. They would have Bible school in some of the canneries. They would go to the small communities and the other villages in southeast Alaska. And so Betty and I spent a lot of time, and our children spent a lot of time on the Anna Jackman, which was a 65-foot steel-hulled twin diesel engine boat. mission
Well,
boat.
I spent some time, my early ministry was in Alaska. We were up in the northern part, or up in Anchorage and Palmer, but we did get out into some of the villages, and I know what a challenge that had to be, and how also very rewarding it had to be.
Very much.
So you were there, how many years were you there in Alaska?
16 altogether, because we left there and then we went down to Tacoma, Washington, where we served there in a congregation, and then to Concord, California. And then I just felt a strong call to go back to Alaska again and be able to help in some of the mission work. And so we went back to the Chapel by the Lake Presbyterian Church, which is located in Juneau, Alaska. And that was a kind of a staging area every summer for all of the mission teams that would go to the various villages and the logging camps and so forth. And so I thought, well, I could be instrumental in helping and doing the orientation at that time for those persons that were going to be traveling out there. And we would have lots of different groups that would come. So we went back there and we served there for 12 years. And then after the 12 years of service at the chapel, I felt very strongly called to do interim ministry and to help congregations who were going through transitional periods to go to those places and then to serve in those congregations for 2 years. We had a 2-year stint and another 2-year stint. Then we had
These are churches where they've had a pastor maybe for a long period of time, or there was some kind of a major conflict and they were
Right.
in between pastors. And I mean, that's a special role and a special
Right.
calling. Did you have some training for that?
Yes, and in our church you go through certification for interim pastor training, and I did the first stint of training. Then after I had served one time as an interim pastor, then I went to the second stage of training for interim pastor ministry and then became totally certified in doing that, and we've done that up until just recently, really.
Well, Betty, when you got married, you had no idea where this man was going to be taking you. So you've been a number of different places, a number of different ministries, and these interim. You're there for a year, 2 years at the most, probably.
Right.
And I mean, how's
I
this?
like to move.
You like to move. Fortunately, you like to move. Wow, that's
About 3 years. Do you think there's something else? No,
all
no,
right.
it's challenging.
You
I do like to.
You're ready for the
go
new
around.
challenges. Well,
Right.
the two of you have been following the Lord ever since you made a commitment to Him.
Right.
And you wrestled with the Lord for a period of time until it became clear that He wanted you to enter into pastoral ministry. And your music ministry, I'm sure, has still been an integral part of your pastoral ministry. Well, it's been in the last few years you've had some challenges, some medical challenges. Tell us about it.
Well, in 1993, I was diagnosed with septicemia, which was blood poisoning, and we were in Juneau, Alaska, and our family physician was also a member of our congregation. And I remember becoming very, very ill, and it took them 2.5 months to diagnose what the problem was. But just after I was admitted to the hospital, our doctor, Dr. Cole, he sat on the edge of the bed at 10:30 at night, and I said, "Tell me what's going to happen." And he said, "Well, you can't reverse this in about 15 hours, you're going to die." And he broke into tears.
Just like that.
Just like that. I asked him to be straightforward with me, and so he broke into tears. And I've always thought to myself, when your family physician starts to cry on your bedside, you know you're in trouble.
That's bad news.
And I went through 2.5 months, and they diagnosed that as a massive abscess on my prostate that burst.
Is that what really they finally determined
And
it
it
was?
took him 2.5 months and through a prostate biopsy. But I'll come back to that in a little bit, because that then put me into urological examinations every 6 months since 1994. And then that's what was early detection just recently for the prostate cancer. But then in 1998, Betty was on business in New York City, and I started having some heaviness in my chest, ended up going to Mount Sinai Hospital, and I had then 3 stents placed in my major artery.
No, and Mount Sinai where? Here
in New York City.
In New York City.
Yeah,
Okay.
she was back on business there, and I went back to join her for 3 days. And
You had this heaviness come upon you.
Right.
No previous indication you had any kind of a problem.
They
Well,
thought he had heartburn.
And heartburn.
I was taking
Indigestion.
Rolaids and all kinds of different things for indigestion. And that was a great experience being there. And I've always felt that God has just watched over us and walked with us through the ills and the difficulties of our lives, and put His hand of protection around us. And
So you went in and had only 3 stents.
yes.
Okay.
Well,
Didn't have a
actually-
heart attack.
No, I had no heart attack. Actually, I had 2 stents put in New York City, and then a few months later, I had a second stent put in at Virginia Mason Hospital in Seattle. And,
Because they needed to put an additional one in.
another
apparently.
one around where the LAD artery turns.
And how long ago are we talking about?
1998.
98. All right.
Right.
So they're all functioning properly there.
Perfect.
I'm doing great.
Perfect.
Great.
Okay. So any other medical challenges?
Well, yes, last May, this has not been a very good year, but again, God has sustained us and walked with us and guided us through this time. My mother died at age 89 in the month of May, and then just following that, I developed a severe pinched sciatic nerve, which put me in a wheelchair for about 3 months during November, December, January of this past year.
3 months you're in a wheelchair.
Right. And then, just after the pinched sciatic nerve, which began to take on its problems in June, then I was diagnosed with prostate cancer
In July.
in July. And in the midst of all of that, then they discovered blood clots in both lungs.
My.
And so I was put into the hospital, and I wanted to go home from the hospital so badly, and the nurses came
I
in
mean,
and
simply
said,
because you wanted to get out of the hospital.
I wanted to get out of the
wanted to get
hospital,
home.
and this was all in Mount Shasta, in the hospital in Mount Shasta. They said, you cannot go home until you can inject yourself with blood thinners. And so I said, bring in the needles. And so they brought them in, and I took one off the tray and gave myself a shot. And, they
And
said,
what
"You
was
go
your shot for?
It was for a blood thinner,
Okay.
and to keep the dissolve that. In the midst of that, I think a miracle took place, because my severe pinched sciatic nerve healed on its own.
While you're in the hospital?
No,
just
over
shortly
time.
after that?
Yeah, and so that healed itself. The blood clots all went away, and so then I was free to begin to look towards care for the prostate cancer.
So you were in a wheelchair for 3 months.
Off and on. I'd have
Yeah.
to get into a wheelchair any place we went because I could
Just to
not
get
stand
around.
or walk more than 1 minute.
Excruciating pain.
Right.
Terrible.
Absolutely.
And then it just kind of
It
disappeared.
all healed itself. Right.
Wow.
So-
So you're in the ministry and serving the Lord. I mean, what were you doing during this period of time? Were you in between? Were you in interim between interim pastorates?
I was in between times. I was serving on a committee in the Sacramento Presbytery that I accepted.
Going back and forth.
Yeah, right. And Betty thought I was absolutely out of my mind when I accepted this position because we have about 26 members on the committee and they asked me to chair it, and so I did. And I'm glad I did. It kept me thinking about other things other than my body and being able to serve God. And I've said all along that I will serve the Lord until I cannot have any more breath in my body. And I
Well,
feel strongly
that's a
that way.
commitment the Lord is waiting for all of us to make as
Right.
we're ready to go wherever. So you finally get through all this. This has been really a challenging year.
Very
Correct.
challenging.
It's a challenging year. And how are you responding to all this that he's going on? I mean, you married him for better or for worse, but you thought it'd be more better than there was worse.
That is true.
This-
I've been the healthy one, so I've been very thankful that I've been pretty healthy through this. And I remember back when he had the septicemia in 1994, I was at work, and I had one of those little flip, inspirational, little
Oh, yes.
inspirational thing, and I flipped it to the day that he was in, and got in the news that if it's blood poisoning, didn't turn around, and was on there. It says, we don't know we don't know what the future holds, but we do know who holds the future.
That's right.
And I remember being at work and people, because he was in the hospital in Juneau, and I went to work, and back and forth to see him, and people at the hospital said, or at work said, how can you be here? And I said, because I do know that things are going to turn out well. And so that has sort of sustained me through all these instances, and we've just made do, and
Well, God's in control.
God's in
Yeah.
control.
That's
And
right.
we've been very blessed with good treatment.
Well, so you finally get through all of this last year, and then you find out about the prostate cancer.
I know.
So how did you end up coming to Loma Linda?
Well, what happened was that a friend that I had known for a number of years and had been in the church in Concord, California, and then she was also living in Red Bluff where I was serving as an interim pastor. She had a friend. She says, you need to call this person up, and you need to call him. And he lived in Yuba City, and you need to talk to him because he went to Loma Linda and had great results. I was scheduled to start radiation treatment just 5 days from then at Mount Shasta Hospital. And so I called him up, and he said, oh, there's only one place to go, and that is Loma Linda University Medical Center. I said, really? Well, tell me about it. So we were on the phone for an hour. Betty is very computer savvy, and so she's on the computer, and she's getting all the information from Loma Linda, goes on line and on the website. And as soon as I got off, I talked to one of the nurses here at the hospital, and it was Brooke.
yeah.
It was Nurse Brooke. And I talked to her. She was on the phone for about 45 minutes, asked me all kinds of questions and so forth, and took all the time with me. And when I got off the phone, I said, Betty, that's where we need to go. These people are so caring and so compassionate. They have so much time to spend with you. And it wasn't long after that Nurse Sharon then called me, and we had another long conversation. And so it was really a miraculous thing of how this friend knew another person that had been here, called me and said, here's where you should go.
Just a little before you were supposed to start another type of treatment.
4 to 5 days before I was to have radiation treatment and have photon radiation instead of the proton radiation treatment.
And nobody comes here by accident.
No.
Our undergirding philosophy is to make man
Whole.
mentally, physically,
Physically and
spiritually,
spiritually.
and emotionally. Right.
Absolutely.
The totality. So tell us about the journey while you were here. What happened? I mean,
It has been fantastic. I have never come across people in a hospital that have been more compassionate, more knowledgeable, more caring, then, because I've had a number of hospital events in my
It
life.
sounds like you've had a number of events in your life.
And I can't say enough for the technicians in the proton beam unit, and enough about all the care that I've been given. And for you, Lynn, and the opportunity that you have, you're our social director.
Oh, yeah.
And Tuesday nights it's potluck dinner, and Wednesday nights it's a program over at the Drayson Center. And Thursday nights, it's out to dinner at a local restaurant, and then support groups and everything. They say you're going to get a little tired in the afternoon from your radiation treatment, and I think I get tired in the afternoons because of all the events we're going to around the clock.
We want to keep you busy.
That's
Right.
true.
And
The time of your treatment, how long did it take? Each time you had a treatment?
I was in there probably by the time I went in the dressing room until I had the treatment and came back out. It was about 20 minutes.
About 20 minutes.
20 minutes each day.
And I understand you've been getting the early bird special.
I have been. I've been going over to my area, my treatment area, and it was, I was going in at 5, so I'd have to...
5 in the morning.
Yeah, I'd go over to the hospital at 4:30 in the morning, and the first time they said, "You're in tomorrow, Mr. Thompson, at 5 o'clock." I'd say, "Well, how do you get in? The hospital's locked." "Well, go to the emergency room and see the security guard, and then he'll take you down the hallway and get you down to level B." And so that's what I began to do. And so I've had very early treatments, and I like that because then we've been free during the daytime too.
So while he's been treated and he's been down here being treated for prostate cancer, what have you been doing all this time?
Well, we're staying in our RV,
Okay.
and we do that, and then I've been very involved in the Drayson Center. I've been gotten involved in aerobics floor as
Now,
well.
the Drayson Center is our
It's
wellness center.
The wellness center, and it's wonderful, as well as
And what have you been
pool.
doing over there?
Well, I've been on the floor aerobics in the morning on the floor, and then I go to the pool and do the pool aerobics.
So you've been doing the floor aerobics and the pool aerobics.
And it's
2 hours.
very good.
Are you
2
talking about every other day?
Every other day, and I should be going 5 days a week, but I'll have the energy on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for how long?
Well, I'm over there about 2.5 hours.
2.5
Right.
hours. Wow, that's great.
And my knees are still working.
They're still doing good. So what have you been doing this whole period of time?
I've been going to the Drayson Center, and I appreciate that so much because I've been working out on the treadmill. Then I go in the pool and swim some laps, and I have the opportunity. I played some racquetball and had the opportunity to do that, and so been exercising, and I've been losing weight intentionally, and I have lost, since I first talked to Nurse Brooke, I have lost now 25 pounds.
Well, congratulations. And this was all intentional.
All
Oh, yes.
intentional,
Yeah.
right.
Well, that's great. Well, you've had many things and many events that have happened in your life. You've been serving the Lord, and one thing after another happens, and then you find out you have cancer. Where's God in all this?
He's right in the center of it.
Right in the center of it. What a great
You know,
answer.
and he really is. And because we don't have this little bubble around us when we become Christian, we don't have this little bubble that
I mean, some people
protects
do
us.
think you got an insurance policy and
No.
going to protect you.
Oh,
and
no,
it's-
no. But what does God gives you strength to go through those tough times. He gives you encouragement, as well as good friends. We've had very
and
supportive
find
friends.
you got a real support system around you.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I've always said that God does not take the ills of the world away from us, but walks with us through those. And that's what I have proclaimed and preached over and over, especially at bedsides and so forth, when I've been a pastor to people over all these years, gone through this.
Well, now that you've had cancer, what difference is it going to make to you?
I just want to get on with my ministry and continue to serve the Lord. And I think that this gives me the opportunity to do that, because I would not want to go on with in the back of my mind, is the cancer going to spread? Am I going to maybe die in a couple of years? But I know that God's hand of protection is around us and will sustain us and help us to continue on in ministry.
Yeah, the question isn't whether we're going to die,
No.
because everybody does. Yeah. The question is, how are we going to live?
Right.
Exactly.
And God's given you another opportunity. Now, even while you've been down here, have you been involved in one of the churches around here? Or It seems like I heard you were talking about doing some singing.
That's right. As soon as we got down here, I told Betty, I said, we need to become connected with a church. And so we began to, first Sunday, we went to the Redlands Presbyterian Church, and that was a good experience for us. They had a wonderful choir. And we had only been there, I told Betty when we left, I said, we're going to search and look for other places. I said, no, let's not do that. I said, so let's just go back and let's lend our support and our help. And even on Easter Sunday, I was asked to be the lay leader there in worship. And then the first Sunday in May, the pastor asked me to participate at the communion table. And then 2 weeks into our being there at Redlands, they asked me if I would sing in the choir, and we sang a cantata on Palm Sunday, and so we became very, very involved in the congregation. They've been asking, why don't you just move down here and stay here? So.
Well, it's obvious that ever since you gave your life to Christ, that He's been guiding and directing and leading you step by step, and you see these different incidences as just opportunities for God to demonstrate His power and work in your life. And God is going to continue to use you as you leave here and go back to the weed area. And
Absolutely.
God's going to open up ministry opportunities for you. Continue to look to Him. And like you saw in that little folder some time ago, we may not know what the future holds, but we know who holds the future.
That's very true.
For our listening audience, I'm so glad that you've been able to join us here and listen to Betty and to Leon and share their experience. And even as they put their trust in God, God's waiting for you to look to Him. Open your heart to Him. Even this week you may have heard some sobering news, but God's got a plan for your life if you look to Him and put your trust in Him. Again, there are marvelous examples of somebody that put their trust in Jesus, and they've been on a journey that's taking them all across the country. Until next week, I'm Lynn Martell with Journey of Hope. God bless you each one. Thank you so much for joining us.